Let's begin, unless anyone's got any issues. First of all, thank you very much, everybody, for attending this Zoom conference. Difficult times, doing the best we can. Sorry about the late notice. My local folks, all of you good folks, for somehow got bumped on something. I sent this out last night, but anyway. So this morning, I filed a lawsuit, my firm, on behalf of two clients that I have. Shayla Hooks, who is here with us today, and Tyrone Jackson, who unfortunately was unable to get off of work today. We were going to do this yesterday, but we switched it up at the last minute for good reasons. As I say in the press conference, this case, in my opinion, is an extremely important case for our society because it really represents an intersection of two really just gargantuan social issues that are gripping our country right now. The first, of course, being the COVID-19 virus that continues to rage and pervade across the country. Arkansas is getting hit again pretty significantly. We've had these recent revelations with the President of the United States on what he knew and when he knew it. I think it's safe to say that this is one of the most cataclysmic kind of news events that's happened in recent history, with all its twists and turns. You have that on the one hand. On the other hand, you have, of course, a very heightened sense of racial inequity in our society since the, I'll just say, murder of George Floyd back in May. And what that police in custody murder has really done is not just show what in my office we've been saying for years and years here. You guys are bored, not bored, but you guys have heard me say for a long time and been very generous with your time. What we have here is an understanding that it's more than just police misconduct we're looking at. It is the institutional racism that again pervades our society, our institutions, our municipalities, and our restaurants. And we're going to touch back on that because there's definitely a racial element, not just in what took place here with that brawl with that unruly white mob from Louisiana, but there's also racial issues here in terms of a Section 1981 case regarding how the Black couple, Shayla and her boyfriend, Tyrone, were treated when compared with the unruly COVID-19 protocol non-compliant out-of-towners who came in and raised hell. So this case really embodies not just two things that are gripping the headlines and that are so ever present in the headlines, but we also talk about the inordinate effect of COVID-19 on African American and minority communities. So what we have here is on the one hand, kind of a simple business invitee type of a lawsuit, but it's under the COVID-19 kind of climate, and so it makes it interesting and obviously very newsworthy. Let me just take a minute to give you the facts of what happened here on June the 27th of this year. Shayla and Tyrone were guests at the Saltgrass Steakhouse over on the west side of Little Rock, where they are pretty frequent patrons. In fact, Tyrone has a Landry's special select club card. Saltgrass is owned by Landry's. Landry's Incorporated is a mega conglomerate restaurateur that dabbles in restaurants like Morton's, Bubba Gump, Maestro's, Saltgrass, of course. They own the Golden Nugget Casino. They've got many holdings all over the country and are quite a formidable economic force. They own Saltgrass. And as you all know from covering the COVID phase 1 and phase 2 implementation by Governor Hutchinson, in June, late June of 2020, we were in phase 2. And phase 2 was a little bit looser than phase 1. The most notable differences were an increase of capacity, maximum capacity, from 33% during phase 1 to 66% in phase 2, provided that you are complying with the COVID-19 protocol. Like phase 1, in phase 2, face masks were still and face coverings were still required in the premises of these buildings, of essential businesses, of restaurants. Moreover, once you're inside the building, you need to be social distance. These are mandates. These are requirements. These are not suggestions. The governor's proclamation and executive orders carry the full weight of statutes. They're operable as law. And while there are aspects of the protocol which are suggestions, there are certainly aspects which are requirements. And the requirements are the ones we speak of today, primarily face covering and social distancing. So when Ty and Shayla arrive at their restaurant, they speak to the manager, who doesn't give them carte blanche to sit wherever they like. No, the manager, the white manager, says to them, well, I suppose you can grab a seat over at the end of the bar. There's space over there at the end of the bar. So for my clients, again, African-American couple, they were not given carte blanche to sit where they like. They were told where to sit, and they were sitting in a COVID compliant area, which was absolutely fine with them, of course, because they're wearing their face masks. They're engaging in social distancing, and so they take their seats over at the bar and they order their food. And about 15 minutes later, a tour bus pulls up in the parking lot. It's filled with, and again, I don't normally say, black couple, white guy, white woman, but these are really kind of, in this case, these are relevant classifications. So this bus pulls up. It's from LSU or from Louisiana, out of town party bus. And a bunch of white folks just come spilling out of the bus. They're having a good time. Nobody's wearing facial coverings. Nobody's complying with social distancing. It's pretty much a free-for-all. And they begin to meander in factions, in groups of 6 and 8, into the restaurant, where they really congest things quite a bit. One of the Louisianans, guy by the name of Robert Willis, is the head of a group of maybe 4 or 5 or 6 folks, and he strolls into the bar area and talks to the manager, and he says, doesn't ask, he says, we're going to go sit over there. And he points in the direction of where Shayla and Ty are located. And to go sit where they were saying they were going to sit would be to violate the social distancing rules inside of Saltgrass. And so that manager, had a challenging decision to make, but one that she was trained to make, and one that she indeed, under the law, was obligated to make. And that is to enforce the rules and enforce the protocol for COVID-19 precautions. And so what that means in this instance is that manager should have turned to Mr. Willis and his group and said, we are very sorry, sir. We very much appreciate your patronage. However, because of the COVID-19 virus and the law of the state of Arkansas, I'm afraid you can't sit there next to that couple. If you would just sit over here for a minute, we'll seat you as soon as we can. That's what the manager should have said. What she said instead is really quite troubling and disturbing, and it's really what leads us here today. What she said in response to Mr. Willis was, if it's okay with them, meaning my clients, Shayla and Ty, well, then it's okay with me, I suppose. Seems innocuous enough on its face, but what this manager was doing was basically passing the hot potato from trained restaurant management staff to untrained paying customer. And that is just from a COVID-19 perspective. I think we all know the sad state of affairs that we are presented with, and how this COVID issue has become political, has become racial, has become socioeconomic. So by sending that unruly, drunken group over there to inquire as to whether they could sit near my clients, what that manager was doing was really setting the stage for the calamity that was about to ensue. And anybody who knows the COVID-19 political landscape, and I would just say anybody who knows the racial landscape in Arkansas, they can see this problem coming down Main Street 2 miles away. This is going to be a problem, and you know it's going to be a problem. What that manager was making my clients do is choose between aggression and possible violence on the one hand, and their own personal health safety on the other. And that's not part of the bargaining process when you go into a restaurant and give money and expect to get food and service. So Mr. Willis goes over to the couple and he says, "Hey, bro, hey, bud, you mind if we come over here and sit? I'm going to sit over here, all right? No problem, right?" And already he's within 2 feet of Shayla and Ty. His question alone, without his face mask on his face, without any face mask in sight, is already multiple breaches of the COVID-19. So we're batting a 0 right out of the gate. Well, when pressed with this awkward societal situation, one that should not have fallen on his lap, Tyrone said politely, but I think firmly, "Well, unfortunately, no. This is the COVID thing, man. So no, it's too close, bro. Sorry, can't do it." Again, his right, his health right. Well, that response did not make Mr. Willis happy, and he exploded, in short, with expletives. What the, you who the fuck do you think you are? Oh, this stupid mother, and he just goes off. The guy's been drinking all day, probably. So he storms off. Another manager comes around and is visible now because the first manager had ducked away after she gave carte blanche to Willis and company. And Shayla and Tyrone actually turn to the second manager and say, "Hey, this guy was just belligerent. He just came within. He's violated the rules. He's not wearing a mask. You got to get this guy out of here. Please do something." And the manager refuses. Okay, so they had notice on both fronts in terms of their management staff. They had every opportunity. If they didn't know, they know now. So what happens is a scene that I think all of us have seen unfold at various bars or nightclubs. When somebody wants to pick a fight with somebody and they start to go in their personal space, they start to walk by and make comments, and in this instance, racial slurs are being said. And eventually, as the group grows in size and this kind of Maoism is afoot, with them pacing around and making sounds and staring people down. Shayla hears the phrase "black bitch." Okay. They hear other slurs. Eventually, one of these gentlemen from, and I use the term loosely, from the group comes up and point blank coughs at Shayla and Tyrone, intentionally coughs at them, at once jeopardizing their health and mocking, really, their concerns for their health, mocking the entire situation, mocking the rules, mocking any type of decorum in a civilized society. He coughs on them like a child might do. And so maintaining their composure remarkably, Shayla gets up and goes into the restroom to clean herself up, no doubt preparing to leave now because this night has pretty much been spoiled. While in the bathroom, she's confronted by 3 women with the group. "What's wrong with your boyfriend? Why is he such an asshole? What's your problem? What's with the mask?" Again, confronting 3 women without masks, confronting a woman with a mask in a restroom. So Shayla is able to make her way out of that situation. And when she returns from the bathroom and goes back to the bar, that's when a vigilant customer begins to record the situation on his cell phone, the video of which went viral, and I'm sure that you've all seen. I would like to say a couple things about that video because it's really been portrayed as kind of a free-for-all, a kind of, 2 sides kind of chomping at the bit to fight. I think what the beginning of that video really shows you is the patience, the poise, and I think just the remarkable tact of my clients. Because there's just belligerence all around them. You got this woman who's trying to get at Shayla. You got this guy who's half sauced, kind of trying to keep her away, but not really. And there's not a manager in sight. There's not a waiter, a waitress. There's not a person in sight. It's like Thunderdome, right? So so then you know what happens. Well, if you look at that fight, that melee, that attack, the woman turns the corner and she begins to push and punt and to poke at Shayla on her back, basically saying, look, here I am, forcing herself on Shayla, forcing Shayla to deal with her while she's just trying to eat and trying to enjoy herself. Simultaneous to that, though you can't see it very well because it's somewhat obstructed by one of the gentlemen in the foreground, there's a guy behind who starts to jab at Tyrone in his midsection and chest, which is before Tyrone comes over the top with the bottle, which I think was, intended to hit this guy. I don't think it hit him. But you have to understand, the clients were going through a fight or flight situation for onwards of about 15, 20 minutes at that point. I mean, it's just a horrible situation. They were outnumbered, and Tyrone is looking to protect his girlfriend. I think that anybody, I mean, I don't even really need to say these things in my opinion, but, I think they've gotten a lot of mileage out of, the glass bottle. It was a very, very kind of a hectic and a very pressure-filled time. And my clients were as patient as poised as one could expect. So the melee occurs, and it's over. And what do we have next? We have the waitress go out and give us. I've been going for a while. If anybody, I'm not used to this COVID-19 stuff. I normally like to read the faces of my audience to know when I'm boring them. But let me know. Do you have any questions thus far as we're going along here? I'm just going to continue on. I'm going to talk a little bit about the aftermath, and then I'm going to talk about the counts of the complaint. But I'm more than happy to talk about any questions right now you guys might have. I'll continue on then. After the attack, the police are called, and very dismayed by the police response, to say the least. But we'll save that for another day. The reason the police response, however, is notable is because one of the employees of Saltgrass, a waitress by the name of Abigail Herman, gives a statement to the police that is an utter fabrication, one that we believe will be completely rendered false and untruthful once we get our hands on the interior video, because we understand that there are 3 videos inside the interior of Saltgrass. 2 should be focused directly on the bar area where this all went down, and another one should be in the lobby. We haven't gotten that video yet, and I've been in negotiations with the attorneys for Landry's, and they haven't coughed up that video. In fact, they're claiming ignorance to the video. They say they're not even familiar with the video, but we know that there's cameras in the place. We believe that the cameras are going to show not only that the aggressors were certainly the Louisianans who came in half soused, totally soused off their party bus, but we think that it's also going to show gross violations within Saltgrass of Governor Hutchinson's COVID-19 protocol and requirements. Namely, we believe that the videotape is going to show in excess of 66% of their maximum capacity of 296. We believe we're going to see upwards of 200 people or maybe a bit less in the restaurant at any given time. And I think the video is also going to show how few, if any, other than my clients, patrons were wearing face masks in that restaurant. And so I think there's a reason we haven't seen this videotape yet. As soon as I'm able to, which will probably be later this week, I'm going to file an emergency motion to subpoena that videotape. I will be happy to share that with you all. If any of you have any designs on getting it, I would certainly encourage that as well. So what do we have in this complaint? Well, the complaint consists of 3 counts. The first count is a simple negligence count. Like I said at the onset of our discussion, this is really just a business invitee case. It's like, you go in a restaurant and you slip on food and you break your back, or there's some chair that is defective and they know about it and you fall and crack your head open. It's really very similar to that. business invitees are owed a duty of ordinary care when they're inside a restaurant like that. And there's an obligation on the owner to provide that. We believe that that it was very foreseeable. There have been countless articles about the tension and stress and even fights that surround these COVID rules, specifically masks and social distancing. We think it was very foreseeable that a fight like this could happen, given the laxity of rules and enforcement of the rules at Saltgrass. Given also the COVID-19 controversy, and I'm sad to report the ever-present racial tensions in the city. We think it was obvious and foreseeable, and it was a gross breach of the duty of care for the manager to abdicate her role in enforcing those rules. That's count number one. Count number two is very interesting. There is a statute, a federal statute similar to 1983 called 1981. And it says that when you enter into a contract, you cannot have that be discriminated against based on your race. Well, when that manager deferred to Mr. Willis and allowed him carte blanche in choosing his seat, not only did she do the wrong thing, but she illustrated a different treatment of a white patron versus the black patron. My clients were not given carte blanche to sit wherever they like. Why was Mr. Willis given carte blanche to sit wherever he likes? So by allowing that to happen in that way, what Saltgrass has done and Landry's has done is they have actually violated the contract rights based on race of my clients. And that is also an actionable case under the US Constitution, federal statute 42 USC section 1981. Finally, the third count is defamation. And it's based on respondent superior on the statement given by Ms. Herman to the police, which was picked up by the media. And we don't fault the media for picking up that statement. Normally what goes in police reports is, if not always 100% accurate, it's at least bona fide and something you can put your hat on. We don't even really blame the police for taking down the false statement. We blame Ms. Herman for giving a categorically false statement of objective fact when she said that that Shayla coughed on somebody in the group. It was absolutely the opposite. It was precisely the opposite. She was coughed on by someone else. So that's a verifiable fact that was said willfully, falsely, and that's going to get you the elements for defamation in Arkansas. That's the case. Now, let me just say, I think that this Zoom meeting might shut off at 9:35. If it does, I will schedule a new meeting immediately and invite all of you immediately to that meeting to make sure I have everybody who's here. Do you guys have any questions in the meantime?
Yeah, Mike, this is Andrew.
Hey.
I guess two questions I had. First of all, on this, why is the lawsuit focused on the restaurant? Was there any consideration given about lawsuit against the patrons who weren't wearing masks and who were part of this confrontation?
Well, you know, it's funny, Andrew. It's a good point. You know, initially when I drafted this complaint, I'll just be totally honest, I had Robert Willis in this complaint as a defendant. Perfect diversity. That's how we're in federal court also. We've got people from Arkansas and we've got a corporation from Delaware/Texas. You throw in a guy from Louisiana, you still got perfect diversity. But the more I thought about it, while I think that what that crowd did was wrong, really, they were victims in a sense as well. Now, not victims like my clients were, but think of this analogy. Imagine you've got two people in a pit. Imagine I put two people in a hole in the ground and I keep them down there for a week. And after a week, I throw down a loaf of bread to one of them, and one of them kills the other one for the loaf of bread, right? Well, one of them's a murderer, right? But you can't help but think that the situation that they were in had something to do with it. So I did not sue Mr. Willis, but I suspect that Landry's will probably bring him in as a necessary party, and I'll let them deal with him. You know, so the short answer is no, not really. This scene was set by, the stage was set by Landry's, by Saltgrass. And, you know, if Mr. Willis is in the case, you know, we'll depose him. And if he's going to go the distance in terms of being in Saltgrass's case or Landry's case, maybe we'll throw a count on him. But at this point, we don't need him. And frankly, he could possibly have a case against Saltgrass and Landry's too.
Hey, I just wanted to preface it. If you guys hear a bunch of talking, that's our control room. I'm trying to get our Skype mute or our Zoom muted so that doesn't interrupt us anymore. So I apologize.
Appreciate that heads up. No worries.
All right, after this, we'll come back to Aaron.
I guess one more question for me, because you kind of alluded to this. Is part of this case the argument that there's a bigger issue of racial disparities in how things like mask mandates and other COVID safety rules are being enforced by private businesses or even by government itself? Is that the bigger issue, and is that why this is a civil rights case?
Yeah, I mean, you know, what things like this reveal, what things like George Floyd reveal, when you see some guy, some white person with a gun waving it and police officers talking him down, or some white guy waving a knife at a group of people and he gets talked down and he winds up going home and, you know, going to jail that night. The inordinate death toll suffered by African Americans and Latinos. You know, again, it brings me zero joy to say this true fact. Black people in our country don't get the same respect as white people. That's just a fact. And so whenever there are nuances in our society, whenever there are new rules or new obligations or new policies or new opportunities for enforcement, Black people and minorities are always treated differently. Sometimes it's great, sometimes it's negligible, but it's always differently. So I think case in point here, I think that a manager might have no problem giving the rules chapter and verse to a Black couple that shows up at the restaurant. But that same manager might feel a sense of trepidation doing the same thing to a similarly situated white couple. And that's so hard to quantify, isn't it? No one said the N-word, right? No one said the N-word. What do we do? How do we quantify that? But see, George Floyd and the COVID situation and other things, the President of the United States and the mess he's creating, it's revealing this incredible cleave in our society. It's revealing our society as one of have and have-nots more than we've ever seen, and in ways we've never seen, in ways that are seemingly incalculable and very daunting to tackle. So yeah, Andrew, this case is dripping with it. And you know, you could try this case and you could maybe even never even say a word about race. I mean, obviously you would, considering one of the counts, but without race in this case, this is still a terrible, you know, it's a bad case. But, you know, again, I've done enough of these types of cases. You know, take the LRPD, you know, a white cop who shoots somebody is treated nicer by his fellow officers, more cordially, less adversarially, than a Black officer who shoots somebody and is questioned by his colleagues. So, you know, I just did, we did the Davis et al. Lawsuit, you know, the promotions, everything's slanted, you know. Sometimes it's a big percentage, sometimes a small percentage, but it's always something. So yeah, this case really has it all. And I'm hoping that we can do some media contacts after this lawsuit, because this is a discussion that I think we need to have in our society. And I think that this case is a good case to illustrate these nuances.
Well, I would like to hear from Shayla if she has, you know, some things to offer as well.
Sure. So Shayla, tell them a little bit about, you know, how this made you feel. Tell them a little bit about what you've been dealing with afterward. And, you know, not just the injuries and stuff, but some of the defamation stuff that you've been dealing with. And then maybe you could just tell them, you know, what you hope to accomplish.
I've been dealing with a lot of embarrassment. I hate the fact that we were like all over the media, that we had to deal with. We were trying to be as patient as possible, but you know, we just had enough. And we were just trying to help the economy out, basically just going out to have something to eat. And we were just, I guess, notified that we had to wear a mask in public. And we followed the rules, and the blame, you know, or the decision to allow them to sit next to us was shifted to us instead of them, you know, taking on the responsibility of just telling the group, no, you can't sit, you know, this is against our policy. And so it's just been a whirlwind and not a good one. And I just hope that justice prevails and, you know, racism is ended.
What kind of was your tipping point into deciding to file this lawsuit?
Basically nothing happening. We were the victims. We didn't get any, no one was arrested that night. We didn't get an apology. I've been dealing with health issues behind this. Just not feeling justified. You know, we just we felt like we were in the blame, but we really weren't. We weren't to blame for what happened. It was basically Saltgrass and the group of people that were, I guess, inebriated.
And I mean, if you look at the police report, it lists Tyrone as a suspect. His demeanor is calm, and it lists Robert Willis as a suspect, and his demeanor is drunk/high. So you know, these people weren't even from Arkansas, okay? And you got a man from Louisiana punching a woman from Arkansas in the eye, giving her a black eye. I think any you know, it's just a ridiculous state of affairs. In terms of what we want to accomplish here, just being vocal. You know, I really feel that we are on the precipice possibly of something great, a greater understanding. Think of how wonderful this world could be if we were spared, if we were absolved of some of this heavy baggage that we've been lugging around for so long in this society. We have an opportunity to level the playing field in some meaningful way. And I get so excited when I think about that possibility, you know, and so we're trying to enlighten, you know, and it's an important case. They should have been, and like I said before, that manager could have gotten my clients killed. That is not hyperbole. That is not fancy talk. You know, in this day and age, arm on Arbery, there's all kinds of grudges. If the fight hadn't happened, they could have gone out into their car and literally been jumped. They could have been followed. Who knows what could have been put in play based on that terribly reckless decision of that manager. Is everybody still around?
Yeah.
Okay. Mitch, I haven't heard from you. Is that you? Maybe somebody else from KRK. Well, we have file stamp copies of the complaint. I just got them back. I can email those out to you immediately. Do you guys have any other questions, any other thoughts? I'd be happy to, you know, I know I've talked enough.
What has been your communication with Saltgrass or Landry's, if anything, about this?
Yeah, actually, good question. I was in pretty fairly intense negotiations with Saltgrass, and in fact, the huge concern for Shayla and Ty initially, of course, was the fear of contracting COVID. Obviously, by virtue of wearing face masks and engaging in social distancing, they care about their health and they do not want to catch this. And next thing you know, they're involved in a melee with a bunch of sweaty, drunk people rolling around the ground who obviously don't care much about their health. So I contacted Saltgrass corporate, Landry's corporate, and absolutely demanded that they pay for COVID-19 testing for Shayla and Tyrone, which they did. And they were negative. I probably should have said that a little bit earlier. So for about 17 days, they lived on pins and needles thinking they had COVID-19, had to sequester themselves even more so from their children, their family, and that's compensable. There's case law that false diagnosis case law involving HIV and other communicable diseases. The time frame is 17 days. It is what it is. That's compensable. The injuries, the fear, the emotional distress, all compensable. I think what Landry's really has to worry about in this case is punitive damages. They could get hit very hard with punitive damages. And I think that this is a case, especially considering the high stakes nature of what we're doing with the coronavirus. I think this is a case where punitives could very, very well be achieved if the case is successful.
Why wasn't Landry's paying for these COVID-19 tests enough? Why wasn't that enough?
Well, for starters, that puts these two not back even where they were before they walked in the door. But more importantly, if you allow this to go down and then just test everybody that gets their asses kicked, sorry for my language, but just you test everybody who's a victim of physical violence, $200 a head, $150 a head, that's no incentive to change your policy. You might as well just let them keep fighting and pack in the rafters. Because again, we think that the manager was motivated by sales, by money, by putting as many people in that restaurant, regardless of the public health concerns to the patrons. So I think that if you don't bring a lawsuit like this, and you just allow them to pay for the COVID-19 testing that these folks shouldn't have been exposed to in the first place, you might actually incentivize them to disregard the COVID-19 rules because it might be cheaper if you consider the additional revenue they get in by exceeding the maximum capacity. So obviously it's just food for thought, but we want an end to the policy. And one of the sticking points we had during that settlement discussion was we wanted them to put in writing that something like this will never happen again. And they refused to do that. So that is another real motivator for this lawsuit.
Hey, Mike, it's Mitch. Can you hear me?
I can, my friend. How are you?
Hey, good. I have a quick question for Shayla, if you don't mind. Shayla, what do you want people to know? If there's one thing out of today, if there's one thing, over the next several months related to what happened there at that restaurant, what do you want people to take away?
That when rules are put in place and the mayor, the governor puts a policy in place to help all of us be safe and get back to a normal place, when we go out and patronize a business, we expect the business to operate in that manner and not to jeopardize us. I have children, I have a family, I have an elderly mother. And so I just want the restaurant and different people to know when rules are put in place to help us, we should all be following them. And also when someone comes from another state to cause harm to an Arkansan, also, the restaurant, they should have had more respect for us. The police should have had more respect for us. And it was none. So I just want people to know when there's rules in place to help the society to be better, we should all be following them. We should not be going against the grain.
Any better myself. That's the heart of it. Do we want to live in a civilized society or do we not? In my complaint, which you guys will see, I clipped a little part from a Bring Your Own Science. It's like literally a nonprofit scholarship organization that does science fairs for middle-aged and middle school and high schoolers. And they say, they're teaching kids, rules are important. Here's why rules are important, It's what we learn as children. It's what we try to impart to our children. Just a gross dereliction of duty by that manager, whose name I believe is Melissa Velasco. And she could have gotten my clients killed. Thank God they weren't. But that can't happen again because somebody will get killed. Somebody will get maimed or very seriously injured. And that can't happen. Anyone else? Well, if that is all, I thank you all once again for your patience while we got things set up and for your attendance. And I will send each of you a copy of that complaint probably in the next 15 minutes. It's file stamped and ready to go.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much.
And good afternoon to everyone. I'm Mitch McCoy here at KRK4 and Fox 16 in Little Rock. You've been watching a live news conference here, of course, in the middle of COVID-19. It's a little different because of social distancing and everything else. But what we are able to report this afternoon, or I should say this morning, it's coming up on afternoon here in just a moment, is that a lawsuit has been filed against Saltgrass Steakhouse over in Little Rock after a lawyer claims that there was COVID-19 protocol-related discrimination. There was a racial attack, according to this lawyer. You heard from attorney Mike Lowe. You've also heard from Shayla, who was in that video, Shayla Hooks, and you can see her in this video back in June sitting at the bar. This leads up to a fight inside Saltgrass all over, according to this lawyer, a lack of social distancing because a couple wanted to sit next to another couple, and they were with a large group, and then you now see how that video unfolds here on your screen. So that is the lawsuit that has been filed against Saltgrass Steakhouse. That happening just earlier today, according to attorney Mike Lowe. And that is the video that we have been showing you on the side of your screen during this news conference. Shayla saying that if there's one thing that she wants to get across here today, it's the rules have to be followed. When it comes to social distancing, when it comes to those guidelines by the Arkansas Department of Health, no one is above the rules there. So we have reached out to Saltgrass Steakhouse. We have reached out to them. We reached out to them before this news conference started here, which was a little more than 45 minutes ago. We have not heard back yet. We will have a complete wrap-up of this story coming up on KRK4 News at 4 o'clock, and then, of course, the 5, and then Fox 16 News at 5:30 as well. But for now, I'm Mitch McCoy at KRK, Fox 16 in Little Rock. It's 11:54. I hope you have a great afternoon. We'll be back at about 1:30 to hold Governor Asa Hutchinson's daily COVID-19 update, and, of course, breaking news as it happens all day long right here on KRK.com, Fox16.com, and all of our digital platforms. Until then, have a great rest of your morning and afternoon.